There's 5 pledges here.
What's a DSK, Annika?
A DSK is like the highest award our chapter can bestow upon a brother. It pretty much means, I guess in our chapter definition, the summary of it was that it was someone that the chapter felt like, I guess, embodied leadership, friendship, and service, and has done a lot of good for the chapter, and like has served a lot, and like been like a really well-rounded, nice individual overall, and done a lot for Epsilon Zeta, APO, and like us in general, and it's someone that like people really looked up to and felt like they wanted to like thank them in some way. So I guess that's what it means.
What does it stand for?
Oh, Distinguished Service Key is what DSK stands for.
Alright, so I guess we'll just jump right into it. So on behalf of the Epsilon Zeta chapter and the DSK committee, we would like to present this DSK to Daniel Adomilli. You know what to do.
Let's all stand up there. No, like this side is more comfortable. We're surrounded there. Okay. I'm first. Okay, you
Using the microphone? Excellent.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I guess today I want to talk about Dan and why I personally feel like he deserves this Distinguished Service Key and this award. And I want to talk about it through a theme that I feel like a lot of us are really passionate about this semester, and that's balance. Balance between brothers and their life and APO, and making sure that overall that they are like a very well-balanced individual. And I want to talk about how Dan is a very balanced person. And I'm going to talk about this through 3 points: leadership, friendship, and service. Right? So I want to start off with Dan as a leader. I pledged the semester after Dan pledged when he was a NIB, and I will say that I was not a very confident freshman. I didn't really know how to talk to people, I was really scared of people, and I remember my room talk with Dan was very intimidating. And I have to say I really did enjoy getting to know him later, especially when he became Kinza's big. He roasted me along with Kinza, and that was a very hurtful time. But it was like something that made me, like, I guess, kind of feel more comfortable with him, and made me realize that he was someone who like saw me as like a brother and someone in APO. And when he went away for a semester, I was really sad because he was in Rome and I wasn't. And when he came back, I felt like Dan had really changed. And that's where I guess this is where Dan as a leader comes in. He came back and he was a really fair person, very strong person, very respectable and very dependable. And that's something that he's maintained throughout these last couple of years. He came back as pledge master for something that's really hard to do, a very hard position, as I know now of being MVP for 3 weeks and having been helping out my 2 pledge masters. I think he did a great job that semester. He worked really hard in reintegrating himself in the brotherhood and integrating himself with 24 pledges that he missed coming in and making sure they all knew him and trusted him. And with that trust that he gained from brothers, he ended up running off the floor and ended up winning the position of president, having never held another econ position before that. And that's something that I'm sure a lot of brothers who saw elections last semester realized that president is something that we all care about. We all love EPO and we all love the chapter. And the fact that we could entrust someone like Dan who had never held that position before, but we all had that confidence in him to lead us so well, was something that I think speaks a lot about Dan's character as a leader. Now, I think that leadership is one of the most common and like prevalent things throughout APO, and I talk about that if you ever want to ask me why I think it's the most prevalent thing. And I think leadership also comes through in friendship. Now, Dan as a friend, I wasn't friends with him at first. Of course, I was terrified of him. Didn't really get to know him that well. But I have to say now that, especially after like these past few semesters, I really want to call Dan one of my very close friends. I had the privilege of serving under him when he was president as fellowship vice president. And that was one of the hardest semesters I ever had at RPI, like emotionally, academically, just overall. And Dan was actually like there for me a lot. He helped talk to me, he didn't pressure me too much, and he knew when to push my boundaries and when not to. He let me take my space and time when I needed to, and he also made sure that I was at least trying to do my duties, along with Kinza, who really just like helped me, I guess, like be there. He was there for me to lean on, and last semester when I came back, having been away for a semester, he was one of like the first people to really make sure I knew what was going on. He gave me the position of awards chair and like really entrusted me with a lot of like stuff and like let me have free reign over the awards chair process and creating the whole position. And that was really nice to see that he had that trust in me, especially after I kind of failed him as FVP. And that's like something I like to say, like a great leader has to be like a great friend. Like you have to like make sure you're leading your friends to a lot of things. And finally, I guess a leader and a friend also has to be of service. And my final point is talking about Dan as brother of service. His dedication to strengthening any part of this APO chapter that he saw as lacking or weak was something that I find really, really remarkable. He took any part of APO that people might have ignored in the past. Like he worked with Jake as president last semester when he was core sec and tried to really make sure Jake's voice was heard and understanding that the core sec position was important to APO and that all of ecom should be acknowledging it and understanding that it's one of the hardest positions because no one really cares what they do. And he helped bring that knowledge to the chapter. He also helped exemplify like our service model and like make sure people are being involved in things as well as like our membership and everything like that. He's really, I think, like one of the perfect examples of a servant leader. And finally, I guess I want to bring this all together with Dan as someone who is very balanced. I don't think like I have ever seen Dan fully fold under pressure before. I've known he's had his hard days, I know he's had his scares, I know he's had really tough time as an RP balancing things, but he's in one of the hardest majors ranked that I've like always seen as like top 5 hardest majors. It's usually number 1, architecture. And at the same time, he's managed to hold such a strong position in APO, make such close bonds with brothers, and do so much for a lot of people. Almost everyone I've talked to about Dan always has something great to say about him, always has a good memory of him, and knows like he's a very respectable person. And that's like why I'm really happy that as a chapter, all of us decided to recognize Dan for this award. I think this is like something that's really special and really nice that I think that he more than deserves, and I'm really, really happy to call him my friend. Thanks again. I talk too quickly.
No.
I think we're gonna go like long, medium, short as far as length. Mine is not that long, but I'll go and I'm gonna read it. Okay, so unlike Annika, during my pledging semester, Dan was abroad in Italy. So I had heard of him from Kenta. She made him sound really scary. When he returned, my first real impression of Dan actually ended up not being from an interaction that I had with him, but from a friend telling me that Dan was the person that was being really supportive and helpful while they were trying to figure out if they could handle and if they wanted to be around and involved in APO that semester. And I've always loved that this was my first impression of Dan. I've told him in a secret letter before. Because Dan taking the time to help out when he was readjusting himself, like Annika said, 24 pledges, it's a very, very accurate description of the kind of brother that Dan is. Over his time in the chapter, for those of you who don't know, he's basically overhauled the responsibilities of president twice, ensuring that all his chairs and econ members were able to develop their jobs and expand our chapter's capabilities. Not to mention, he's helped nurture our membership program. He's been both pledge master and retention chair, and all of these jobs he's taken incredibly seriously, and he's helped them to grow. But Dan deserving this honor goes beyond just how well he's done his job, but it also goes into how he has fulfilled his duties through his level-headed and unbiased leadership. And also it relates back to my first impression of Dan, in which I also agree that Dan really embodies the pillar of fellowship as a great friend and a supportive brother. During the first of our 2 terms together as president and FVP, he told me, just wait, we're going to be really good friends after all this. And I was like, well, I never told him, but in my head I was like, Dan, we're already friends. No, just kidding. But looking back, I really, I understand what he meant, because I really didn't quite yet get, how, the joy of being Dan's friend and, all the great things that come with it. Dan is someone who we're all lucky enough to know that he takes the time to lift up all the people around him, check in on the people around them, and I know for me personally, he's one of the big people that's always made me want to stick around and still be here even when things got really hard. So on behalf of myself and all of our wonderful brothers, thank you for everything that you've done big and small for our chapter. You very much deserve this.
Okay, I can't speak that loudly because I'm dying. But, when I was first asked to prepare a speech for Daniel getting his DSK, my initial reaction was to just have a speech full of insults, seeing as this is what my relationship with him is based on. However, I decided against that because this is a special moment for Daniel, so I figured I'd do something unusual and actually compliment him for once. There are very few of you in this room. There are very few of you. Put that down,
speech.
He was showing this. It was my special moment.
I can't even see you that burned down here.
There are very few of you in this room who may remember what Daniel was like before he studied abroad in fall 17. He was a very different brother back then compared to who he is now. Those of you who pledged in fall 17 knew his name because I was bringing him up in every room house with you, as Amy mentioned, saying he was a bad big who made me wait for over 6 months to get my trads. I remember several of you were scared to meet him and were surprised that he wasn't that scary of a person. When he came back in spring 18, he was different. He realized that APO meant more to him than he initially thought. That semester he was pledge master, and despite the fact that that semester was the only time I hadn't received a little, he wasn't a terrible pledge master. When econ voting came around, I remember Daniel was nervous about being nominated for president because he had never been on econ before, and he thought it was too big of a jump for him to go from never being on econ to being president. And yet I nominated him, and the multiple people who seconded my nomination helped him to realize that people wanted him as president. And I think many of you can agree with me that he has made a great president both semesters. As president, he helped restart our scouting program, bringing our chapter back to its roots. Under him, our risk management policy was redone so that we could hold ourselves to similar standards to the other Greek organizations on campus. He helped improve our relations with our advisors. He is someone that people trust and has helped put out the fires that have popped up. He has helped us move forward and has helped make us a successful chapter. Through his actions as a brother, it is clear how much he cares about APO because everything that he has done has helped make us a better chapter. Even now, in his last semester, he wants to continue to make an impact and do important work, which is why he took on a senior advisor chair and is part of several committees from MEMCOM to the BMOD Planning Committee to Sectionals Committee. He just doesn't stop caring. On a more personal note, as you all know, Daniel is my big. We've been stuck with each other for 3 years now. Our relationship started off a little rocky, but it's developed into a wonderful relationship to the point where if someone sees one of us without the other, they get concerned and ask where the other person is, because apparently we're always together. He's a brother that I never asked for, but I'm extremely glad to have in my life. We trust each other and know we can go to each other for anything. We use each other as soundboards to bounce ideas off of one another or to help each other with a problem that one of us has to deal with, something that has been pretty helpful, especially during his term as president. Daniel, I know you get in your head a lot, and I know you question whether you should have or could have done more. If you can't tell, you receiving DSK should make it clear to you that you've done so much for our chapter. And despite the fact that I know you're not going to let me live down this speech, I'm so happy for you and I couldn't be more proud of you.
Are you all?
Thank you, everybody.
That speech
Thank
also
you.
got to-
Oh my God.